everyone, and welcome to Conversations on Craft, where we dive into the messy and magical world of writing and demystify the publishing process. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by Ash Sekhon, author of Assumptions, a psychological thriller novella set in 1880s London. Ash has taught history at university level, and this is fed through into their fictional work. Ash, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
We're going to start off, as always, with our quick fire round. So, Ash, do you prefer working on a laptop or paper?
Well, I will always do my rough draft with pen and paper because it allows me to go and see what changes I've made. Maybe I go back on them at some point or decide to do something different. But then when I have that ready for the editing phase, I will type it up.
And your favourite author and why?
Oh, I can't pick just one. There are so many good ones. Let's see. Um, Poe, Stevenson, Kafka. Um, I also like both of the Shelleys because I enjoyed Frankenstein as well as Percy Shelley's poetry. So, I mean,
So, all the dark Gothic writers. I love it.
yes.
What's the most difficult part of the writing process for you?
Honestly, probably the editing is the most difficult part because I am a bit of a perfectionist and I go and second guess myself and I might go back and change things, I don't know, half a dozen times before I get something I'm satisfied with.
And your best time of the day to write?
It's either very late at night or very early in the morning because that is the time when things are quiet.
And sometimes those times overlap. If you stay up
Yeah,
that late, you think,
they
oh,
do,
it's
honestly. I
nearly the
mean, I,
morning.
I have seen the sunrise before, not from waking up early. So,
Wow. And do you plan your books or do you write them organically?
it's a bit of both, honestly. I first try to get the characters in mind, and I might have a few scenes that I think, oh, I think this might be good to include in the book. And I will see then if the characters organically arrive at such a scene, and if they do, that's great. And if they don't, then that's okay. That's part of the process.
Fascinating. So we're going to dive deep into your writing process now, Ash. And can I take you back to when you first got your idea for the novel Assumptions? So Assumptions opens in such a dark gothic way. It's an incredible opening that really hooks you. When did you first get the idea? Was it character led? Was it situation led? Can you give us an insight into that moment?
It was a combination of things. It's sort of a perfect storm in the best possible way. I had recently read a quote, and unfortunately, I don't know to whom I should attribute it, but it said, "Write the story you wish existed in the world."
I think it's Toni Morrison.
Is it?
I
Okay.
think,
Okay.
yes.
And that is such good advice because I had an idea and I had like essentially I had run through all the Gothic novels and novellas and I was like, "Oh, I wish there were more because I love that genre so much." I'm like, "Well, I know I'm not technically Victorian, I'm a modern person, but I could probably manage at least an Edwardian style, something along the lines of Upton Sinclair. So I'm like, all right, maybe I could do this. And then I was thinking, well, what kind of story? And it just happened that I had taken a trip with my family to Japan because my father had some business there. But when I witnessed Japanese society, I was somewhat familiar with Japanese history as well. I just noticed the way in which people interacted, which is very, typical in everyday, interactions in a store or restaurant or what have you, where people had what they refer to in Japanese, the translation is mask face. And it is the, social face that you use for interacting in public, and it makes sure there is harmony in the world and people get along and do what they need to in public. But then your own thoughts and feelings and all those sorts of things you keep inside, and you share those with people who are in your circle. And it occurred to me witnessing that, I thought, my gosh, this is like Victorian times. where people did have to, keep the stiff upper lip, and the way that you interact in public, you have to have a certain degree of seriousness or decorum if you wish to be respected and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, it's not exactly the same, but I do see the overlap. It's a bit like a Venn diagram. So I was actually on the plane ride back from Japan, and I had bought a notebook at the 100 yen store. And I just started writing down in a notebook. I'm like, okay, I had that spark of an idea. I'm like, I think I can work with this. I think because I have this sense of it now. I've witnessed it. It's one thing to read about it. It's another to really see it in action. And I thought, all right, let's see where this goes.
So what came next? Was it characters that came next, or
Oh, I had the main character in mind from the moment I started writing. That was part of my write the story you wish existed.
yeah?
I thought I want a character like this. This is the character that I want. And then from there, I started developing, okay, so what's going to happen next? Where should I start this? What would be the best place to, let the readers come in to be able to um, maybe pique interest but not give away too much. Um, and also from that point, I started developing ideas for, well, who would be the foil to this main character? What would be a good, sort of opposite, but could give this character a run for their money, create problems in a fun way. So,
Yes. So your characters, Richard and Henry, um, and I kind of love that Henry has a secret, and Richard is this irredeemable cad he's described as. Um, I loved how you kind of have created them at the same time in opposition to each other, and your work is described as character led.
mhm.
Can you talk us through how these characters developed over time?
Yes, yes. So I started with a basic idea of who Henry would be, and I wanted him to at once, be this, respectable fellow, but at once, at the same time, he's a fellow with a secret that he does not wish to be revealed. Just as, some Victorians in the days had things to hide, as, people are people. And meanwhile, I thought, okay, well, it's kind of funny to pull in from of all things comic books, but Stan Lee, who wrote, a lot of the early Marvel stories, he said when he needs some quick plot, he thinks, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen to this character? What do they really not want to happen? Okay, let's have it happen. And I thought, okay, what would be bad for a person who doesn't want their secret revealed? Well, someone really good at ferreting out secrets, obviously. So it's sort of Dick's stock in trade is figuring out people's weak spots and how to blackmail them, and or if he feels like it, cause them to fall from grace socially. So.
I'm going to use that tip whenever I have writer's block, Ash. I'm going to think, I'm going to recall your words of wisdom there. What's the worst thing? And Stanley's words of wisdom. So, your first draft, how long did it take you?
I would say that took, I didn't keep an exact count of weeks, but somewhere between 2.5 to 3 years. Because
And
oh, sorry, I just wanted to.
presumably you're writing the novel alongside work and things. Did you?
Yes, so actually, let's see here. I got a large part of it done during that first year because that was my gap year between undergrad and grad school. So I had quite a bit of free time, which was nice. And then I sort of wrote it along in my free time while I was in grad school. And then by the time I had finished grad school, I had finished the first draft.
I love people whose novels take as long as some of mine have taken, because when people say, "Oh, I wrote it in 2 weeks," I think we cannot be friends.
Oh, I mean, hats off to them, but I do not work that way. I wish.
Yes, yeah. And so, can you talk us through the revision and editing process from that point? Did it take many drafts?
Oh, yes. I mean, before I even let anyone else read it, I edited it myself probably about 9 or 10 times. Just the whole read through, just go and edit and, the whole process. And then when I just let my family and friends, see it, first off, I probably edited it another 2 times. And then when I finally worked with, I lived, in Kentucky, and there was a nice the Carnegie Center for Literacy and Learning, and so they are affiliated with the University of Kentucky, some of the teachers there. So they have a writing mentorship program, and I worked with a fellow who was a professor of literature at the University of Kentucky, and had him, I asked him to read through it. Of course, it's, you pay for your services. And he gave some very good advice, because it was mostly good to go, but there were a few things that I needed to tweak if I wanted it to be more marketable, palatable, that sort of thing. So only after that, and that was probably then the 12th edit, did I submit it to anyone to see about publishing. So,
What would you say changed most about your craft? So over those years of the first draft and then uh, your work with this fellow, what changes do you think could you see in your own writing and the writing process?
well, I think as with any writer, if you add, years from the time, that you first, wrote whatever it is, you're going to have very slight stylistic differences. And even though I still, try to hew to that vaguely Edwardian style, um, I would, it's fooling oneself to think that you would have exactly the same style as you did when you first set out. Um, I will say that as well, one thing I had to keep in mind, especially for this second edition, was that I now am working on both the sequel and the prequel, and I had to make sure that there wasn't anything in Assumptions that would in any way contradict the sequel or the prequel. So thankfully there wasn't too much, just very, very slight edits. But the major edit in this case was that, as you can tell by my voice, I'm American, but the story is set in London in the 1800s, and the first edition had all of the American spelling and punctuation conventions. And I, just got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, if I were a British person reading a book set in Victorian London and I saw all these American spellings, like, honor not having a U, or story as in story of the building not having that E between the R and the Y, that would break immersion for me. Who is this American who's written this? This is set in London. What's going on? I'm no longer in the story in the time period. And my own experience reading all the Gothic novellas, I mean, they're British. They have British conventions, punctuation with the single quote rather than the double quotation mark, all that. So I just wanted it to reflect the British conventions for a better reader's experience.
So is that what prompted the revision? So last month, a new edition of your novel was released, and was that the main
That
reason for
honestly
the
was the main, yes, it was the main thing. Because I myself, I don't like it when you can see the fourth wall, right?
Yes, yeah. And it's strange how even just a difference in spelling can really destroy that fourth
Exactly.
wall, and it pulls you out of the story, doesn't it? And it seems bizarre, but it's a very small thing that can just
Mhm.
break that spell that you've woven for the story. Um, so your novel opens with a man waking up on a slab in a dark London morgue, and he's alive, naked, and disorientated. What an incredible opening! You had me at the word morgue. I was like, yes, this is my kind of book. And he's terrified that he may have died and gone to hell. And there's a storm outside, but yet the stillness in the setting still feels very wrong. And I love how you get the reader to ask this unnerving question of is he going to get a second chance, or is something far darker at play? It kind of had shades of Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde's Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
Um, can you describe to us how you created this dramatic opening, and also how you made that tension in that dramatic question of is it a second chance, or is has he gone to hell?
Well, in all of the sort of Gothic horror, books that I've read, the very best ones have this sort of creeping psychological terror. The true horror is not going to be in your face. It's going to be this subtle feeling that something may be very, very wrong. And yet there's the uncertainty of, but is it actually? Am I just imagining things? Because that's the closest that we might come in real life to feeling that sort of dread. So I think it can hit home better that way. Also, as far as maintaining that sort of tension, I like the storm outside to well, I like it to reflect the sort of the internal state of the character, and yet there's this strange silence. I think that creates tension. And then, as far as carrying it forward, this is a character who, I mean, he is very Victorian. He's born in the 1830s and currently in the 1880s, raised in a religious household, all of the things that a person would bring to bear there. And I thought, well, you know, if I were this character with this mindset, or really if any of us were, right? And I woke up in the dark and didn't know where I was, and the first thing I could experience was touch, and I felt something cold underneath me. And then I encountered all the horrors one can encounter in a morgue. Um, I might, think, is this reality? Is this really happening? If I were religious, have I died and gone to hell? What's going on here? This house of horrors. What? Or and no, maybe it's logical. Maybe I, calculated this correctly, and it's all right. But then again, maybe not. So
I love to be placed in that Victorian mindset, because I think it's so easy to forget nowadays how how much there was this belief in the afterlife and in purgatory and in hell, and as a Victorian, that would your mind would have gone there.
exactly, exactly. And honestly, I feel like I have my own grandparents to thank for that, because my mother was the youngest of four children, and it was a bit of a surprise to her mother. So my grandparents' parents were actually born in the Victorian era.
Oh,
And so some of that, through my interaction with, my mother's parents, was able to come through. And I really feel very grateful for that, because it's a bit of a window into a bygone world.
can I talk to you in your novel around how you balance this disorientation with clarity for the reader? I've read a lot of openings to novels, and I think it's a really difficult balance to strike where you want your character to be disorientated, but yet that's the last thing the reader needs when you're opening a book. Could you give us some advice around how to navigate that?
Well, I think that it's good to give enough details to at least know where the character exists in physical space. You need to know what they're doing with their body. If there are some thoughts going through their head, that's great. Have some insight there. Hopefully, nothing that completely gives away the plot, but, just give a sense for what the character's going through. Um, because that will be sort of an emotional touchstone. And then you have, the physical orientation is helpful as well, because you can visualize it in your mind. You can, and as far as, having the tension going forward, you reveal a little. This is a book where, but not too much. This is a book where if you get to the end of it, you can go back and read it again and be, there were the breadcrumbs. There was the foreshadowing. So
Wonderful. So you can almost like seasoning food, I suppose. You can think, oh, I've not used enough salt, or well, let's take some of it away in revisions.
yes, exactly. And I mean, and like I said, I probably this went through a dozen revisions before I ever submitted it to anyone. So it is a fine balance.
So obviously, you've taught at university level and in history. How did your experience feed into your work? And can I ask about the research process for this book? You've mentioned your family connections. Can I ask what other research you did?
Oh yes. Well, of course, I dug into 19th century British history, because that's the time period. That's the Victorian era. And when I was choosing, when to set the book, I thought, well, really, probably the most relatable to some extent to a modern reader would be the late Victorian era, because you sort of see there. It is different, of course, but it's laying the foundations for the modern day. When I was doing the research, I mean, I looked at the social issues of the time. I looked at the political issues. I looked at health issues. For example, there were cholera epidemics, in the middle of the 19th century. So I looked as well at the particulars of London. I looked at historical maps. I looked at, because of course, with the Blitz, certain buildings were, no longer there these days. They've been replaced by different things. And I thought, okay, well, physically, where is this set? If he wakes up, in this morgue, what's the most likely morgue? Okay, if he goes this direction, where is he likely to end up? Where are the different sections of the city? How does this relate? And I sort of navigated, I pulled up old maps and landmarks, and I looked also at socioeconomics of the time. There are wonderful maps illustrating which areas of the city were more affluent, which ones had poverty, and it's a gradation in the scheme. So, I mean, really a lot of details. And where I could, I also looked at photographs or engravings. Of course, those are a little harder to come by.
I love that you place yourself almost physically there using maps, and you mentioned that as advice for opening a novel to kind of give the reader a sense of that physical space. And I love how you've been grounding yourself in history, but also when you write, you ground your reader in the text. There's a lovely parallel there.
Good, I'm glad.
So I'm going to move on to your journey to publishing Assumptions. Was Assumptions your first book, Ash?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's I at one point when I was writing it, I didn't think it would ever be published. I didn't write it with publishing in mind. I was only writing for myself. But by the time I got to the end of it, well, it was a bit of a journey. I thought maybe someone might like this. Maybe someone might enjoy reading it, besides just me. And there was actually unfortunately, a friend was a family friend's friend who, the family friends said to me, oh, he writes stories set in the past. I could have him look over your manuscript. That's fine. I'm like, okay, sure. I don't really know anyone in this business. I'm just sort of getting my feet wet. Have at it. Great. Well, her mistake was lumping us together simply because both of our stories were set in the past. Mine is very, Victorian style, Edwardian style, Gothic novella sort of deal. And his was a modern take on the sort of detective noir sort of novels. I mean, it almost had lines like she was a leggy dame. I mean, it was one of those sort of things. And, the only feedback he gave to my manuscript, he wrote on the front in red, it's like you vomit words. And then he put a frowny face. And that was it.
Is that a bad thing? That
Well,
you that you can use language? Is that surely that doesn't deserve a frowny face? That's a smiley face, surely.
I mean, and, I had at the time, I've always, more when I was younger, but still, I've sort of struggled with self-esteem. So to have it's like you vomit words, and I'm like, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe nobody wants to read this. Maybe I'm fooling myself. Maybe I'm the only one who likes this kind of thing. I don't know. I was, in my early 20s. I was, what did I know? Um, but, then what happened was I happened to be in a bookstore because I am an avid reader. And there was a series by an author, and I will not name the series nor the author in deference to them because everybody has different genres, different people like different things, just like the detective noir authors. My novel was not his cup of tea, so I picked up a rather popular book series. And I was like, oh, everybody likes this. Maybe I can learn something from it. Start reading the first chapter. Have to make myself finish the first chapter because I really don't care for the writing. Put it back on the shelf and think, well, you know what? If this can get published, I can get published.
I love it.
So that was the start of that journey.
Can I ask, how did you navigate that self-doubt? Because I hear from lots of new writers and writers aspiring to be published, and I think it's sometimes hard to really appreciate how low you can feel when you're trying to get published, or you are navigating your own writing and there's days where you think, oh, this is all horrendous. Have you got any advice for how you navigated it yourself and what you'd recommend others to do?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, when you're writing, of course, do what works for you. Some people will have like a fancy, book and pen and whatnot. I myself, with the self-esteem problems, I was only able to start writing because I had a notebook made from recycled paper from the 100 yen store from Japan, which is like from, the dollar or pound store,
Absolutely.
and a free pen that the bank had given me for opening a checking account. Okay, so that's what I started writing. But through the process, I draw this parallel. Like I mentioned, I enjoy learning. I enjoy learning about different cultures, and I also, had learned some about Japanese culture. And I had watched this particular anime called Neon Genesis Evangelion at a time in my life when I was very low, very depressed, before I had even written anything that I considered, ever. And even though the anime itself it can be rather depressing, it made me feel by watching it, ah, I'm not alone. Someone else has felt the way that I feel. And that to me was incredibly heartening because if you have the self-esteem issues, and moreover, if you have depression, which I did at the time, just to know you're not alone is such such a helping hand, such a ray of hope, a step up. So what I told myself throughout trying to get this published was, well, you know, the fellow who, Hideaki Anno, the creator of Evangelion, he himself felt very low at one point. And this series is sort of how he expressed and came to terms with a lot of things going on in his life, including his father's death. If that he was feeling, he put out in the world, and it helped me. And of course, we've never even met each other, but that could help me. Then maybe, just maybe, what I've written can help someone else and help them feel that they too are not alone. And that was really what I held on to when I went. I'm like, I'm not publishing this for me. I'm publishing it for whoever it may help.
Power of art.
Exactly.
Wonderful. So I'm going to take you back. You've got a terrible frowny face. What happened next? How did you decide what to do from that point?
Well, like I said, that act honestly cooled my jets for about a month. But even when I can't write, I usually read. And that was when I happened into the bookstore and thought, oh, I'll pick up this popular book. And because it was so not my genre, and because, I mean, at the time, in my, youthful judgmentalness of writing, I was like, this is drivel. I mean, it just wasn't my genre. That's fair. That honestly was the biggest confidence boost I could have received. Because I'm like, this is so popular. How? This really? This? Well, okay. Okay, I know I can use more complex grammar than this. I know I can, call it vomit words if you want, but at least it's not this. That really helped, honestly. And from there, then I did start seriously, editing it. I had, unfortunately, in between there and the publishing time, a run of rather bad health for about 10 years, honestly. But once that started to lift a bit, then I was able to seriously go back, finish editing it, and apply for publication.
Do you have any advice for that publishing journey? Were there things about it that surprised you at all?
Well, I knew going in. I mean, I'd heard it's like, look, you're potentially going to get, you know, 99 no's for one maybe, right? Be prepared for rejection. It's nothing personal. Honestly, I was taking a voice acting class at the time as well, and one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me was that our instructor said, look, if you try out for a role and you don't get it, don't take it necessarily as a reflection on you. It's just that what they were working for didn't happen to be what you were offering. Everyone is, looking for a different fit. He compared it to Swiss cheese, with the holes in it. He's like, look, they're looking for the exact right amount of cheese that will fill in that hole and make it a complete block of cheese. If you don't happen to be that shape, that's just, reality. You'll try for a different role and maybe you will be the shape that they need. So it's it's just to keep applying.
That's wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. So, who did you apply to first? Did you go to agents first, or did you go to publishing houses?
Oh, I really didn't know any better, and I just submitted straight to publishing houses. I eventually, through a friend of mine so I had let this friend read the rough draft, and um, she had finished it and was said to me, "Okay, when's the sequel coming out?" I'm like, "Look, the original book is not even published. You're jumping ahead a little bit. I've not even been." And she said, "Look, okay, you keep submitting to these places. That's fine. I understand you're concerned about like retaining rights for things, and that's narrowing your options a bit." And she actually, you know, bless her, she compiled a list of about 36 different companies that she, after diligent research, thought might be a good fit simply because I was like, oh my gosh, you don't have to do that. And she said, I want to read the sequel.
What a wonderful friend. We all need a friend like that in our life.
Yes. So I just submitted, checked them out one by one and went through and that was very fortunate. We should all be so fortunate to have a friend like that. Um,
Yes, yeah. So you really you wanted to retain your rights.
yes, to the greatest extent possible. And I eventually, found Rowanvale, and of course they're based, out of Wales, and they are very good in that they are, somewhat selective in that they won't just be like, oh, we'll publish anything, but they're sort of that fine line. Like if I were to say, here's self-publishing on the one hand, and you've submitted to your traditional publisher on the other hand, and you don't have your rights necessarily anymore, they're very nicely right at sort of the in-between because they are somewhat choosy about what they publish, but you retain the rights. You're paying for the service they provide. And they also have connections with distributors and proper bookstores. It's not like it's just going to be, oh, so and so decided to write a thing and put it on Amazon or something, and you don't know the quality of it. They do look for quality work to be willing to submit that to like Waterstones and that sort of thing. Their distributor would supply those types of stores. So it's that nice sort of middle ground where yes, you are paying rather than being paid unless you get royalties, but you retain your rights, and it's out there in the world in proper bookstores. They're choosy about what they publish. So I feel like it was a good fit
A good
for
fit.
sort of a niche book like mine.
Yes, wonderful. It's great to hear different options because in so many instances, writers think, oh, it's either this or this,
Hmm.
and actually, there are so many different options out there. I think
Exactly.
we all need a friend like yours in our lives to do diligent research on lots of different companies and all the options for
Hmm.
us. Um, so, can you talk to us about when writers are feeling like the barriers to publishing are too great? Obviously, we've thought about exploring all those different options, but do you have advice for people who are feeling like they're never going to get there, they can't break into the industry? What would your advice be?
Well, this may sound a little hypocritical because it's my friend who did so much research. I tried to do research on my own, but she was much more thorough. She had a spreadsheet and everything. Um, Look at the companies that are out there. Don't totally rule out, I wouldn't say necessarily self-publishing, but a sort of hybrid, middle ground service like Rowan Vale, right? Um, if Especially if you're someone who's concerned about retaining the rights to your work, every company is going to have a different fit. Just because, the ones that you happen to submitted your work to didn't say yes, it doesn't mean that the right company isn't out there. Look online, see what people say about the company, see the experiences other authors have had, see the types of books that they publish, and that will give you a bit of a better sense for what the company itself is about. And then you can be more selective, as far as concentrating your efforts and submitting to people who will be more likely to actually publish you.
I think research is key, isn't it?
It
So,
really is, yes.
yeah.
It's key to writing a book. It's key to getting published. Research is really very important, yes.
I'm very conscious that my aim is to be traditionally published, and so that's the only aspect of publishing that I have researched and really looked into. So it's wonderful to talk to someone who has a different experience and has navigated a different aspect of the industry.
Mhm.
Um, if you could go back to when before you started writing and give yourself one piece of advice, what would you say to yourself?
Take criticism with a grain of salt and know that your work has value.
Wonderful advice. Um, do you have any final words of advice for? We're asking you for a lot of advice today, Ash, aren't we? We're getting our money's worth today. Do you have any final words of wisdom for writers wishing to improve their craft of writing? I know you've mentioned reading quite a lot. You're such a huge reader.
Yes, always be reading and or writing. I myself, I've encountered writer's block before. I mean, during the pandemic, my brain was in survival mode. I just couldn't work on the sequel. I wanted to, but I couldn't. Well, even then, I was able to commit to some small pieces of writing that I knew would never see the light of day. Little silly things like, little vignettes between, a friend of mine's like D&D character and my character. Just something just, very not even low stakes, but no stakes. And even on days where I couldn't write for that, I still kept reading. So just always keep reading and writing. And if you are not experiencing writer's block, excellent. Write the story you wish existed. If you're stuck for plot, ask yourself what's the worst thing that could happen to this character. Have it happen.
Wonderful. Ash, thank you so much. Can we find you online and how would we purchase your book if we wanted to buy it and have a look?
So it should, in the UK at least, it is available in, proper bookstores. Just, go look for it. It should be there. It's also available on Amazon in both the UK and the United States. If you need an online place to go to look for, I need something to click on to take me to where I can purchase this, you can go to my website, which is assumptionsbook.wordpress.com.
We'll include all links in the bio below as well. So if you want to click on those, I'll add in a Waterstones link. I was looking at purchasing from Waterstones this
Perfect.
morning. So thank you so much for your time today, Ash. It has been incredible speaking to you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.